One of the features that we've introduced in SecurityReview.AI happens to be one of our most revolutionary capabilities with this project. Now, this essentially speaks to a requirement that comes from many of our customers, which is, hey, I don't have very good documentation. And in fact, I have a project that has just source code, but absolutely no documentation. Can I do something to leverage the source code and do a threat model based on that source code rather than prepare documentation and diagrams and all of that stuff and be stuck without it? Till now, this was a huge challenge to overcome simply because code bases are large. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening inside the code base. There's also a bunch of abstractions happening inside the code base. There's a whole bunch of different types of code, different languages, different platforms, different frameworks, infrastructure as code. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening. With all this in mind, you need to have some kind of a capability to walk through the code base, explain the code base to an AI, and then leverage that to perform a threat model or a security design review. Now, we have precisely cracked that problem with our new code profiler feature. Now, let's talk a little bit about what code profiler can do for you. Code profiler basically allows you to set up a GitHub repository just like so. You can literally just set it up like this, and you can select the GitHub repository. And once you select the GitHub repository, it basically crawls the entire code base with targeted queries against the code base and then builds something called a code profile. Now, this code profile is basically like a walkthrough of the code base with all the different abstractions in the code base. So you'll see that we are walking through the code base of DefectDojo, which is an open source vulnerability management tool. It was an OWASP vulnerability management tool, very large code base, a huge bunch of things happening. It's a Python based code base. So you'll see that it has a whole bunch of code abstractions. Now, the code abstractions relate to URL routing. So this project essentially is a vulnerability management tool. It consumes scan results from different places and it allows the streamlining of security findings and so on. This code profiler essentially builds out a profile with some security impact to that particular profile. So essentially builds out all the key abstractions in the application based on the code. It also, for each abstraction, it captures some security notes or considerations to say that, look, based on this feature, we believe these are some of the key security considerations and so on. And it builds it out for every other capability or every other abstraction in here, and you'll see it also creates rich diagrams for this. Now, the benefit of something like this is huge simply because you can use this as input for your threat model. You can also, in fact, use this to even train your new developers on the code base. In fact, you can make this a very valuable training for your new developers on your code base. And that will ensure that you can actually have this as a single source of truth input for your threat model and for developers to even understand some of the security impacts for this. This is really powerful because it again does not require you to prepare any documentation. It literally just allows you to point it to a GitHub repository or a GitLab repository and then pull the entire code through a code profile and build out a code profile through targeted queries. In fact, we have run this against massive repositories like the Kibana open source repository, which has 20 GB of just source files, and it's been able to deliver a very powerful view of the abstractions, the security considerations, and all of that stuff. So it's really, really powerful stuff that you can do with the code profiler. With this in mind, you can essentially just quickly run a review. You can say that, hey, let's do a full threat model of DefectDojo, and let's use, in this case, only the GitHub repository or the profile that we've built. We don't even need any diagram. So imagine you have absolutely no documentation of this whatsoever. You can just point it to code or a repository, and you are literally off to the races with that one. So you can just start doing your threat model with little to no documentation other than source code, which you are almost guaranteed to have in most cases, depending on the kind of product that you're building. So it's literally this simple for you to start building out very, very impactful and targeted security design reviews based on capabilities like our code profile, which gives you the ability to just use Git repositories and source code as input from a threat modeling perspective. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.